So this is still the front yoke that I have sitting in front of me. I realized that I forgot to notch the top of the pocket in the last video. So let's do that. And then hopefully that'll remind me so that I remember to say it when we do the back skirt yoke as well. So that notch again is to remind us where this pocket opening is supposed to be. So this is the front skirt yoke and this is the pocket opening. So we'll need a notch for that same thing on the back yoke. So now let's do the back yoke. So pretty much everything that we did on the front yoke applies to the back yoke. Instead of front overlap, we'll have a back fold, so we'll notch that a little bit differently for center back. So 1/2 inch seam allowance, should be square at center. And then 1/2 inch seam allowance at the side seam. And again, square at center. And this is 1/2 inch seam allowance at the bottom of the yoke where it's going to connect to the ruffle and the underlay. And then we'll go ahead and cut this out. No, forgot to staple it. So let's see if I messed it up already, or if it can be salvaged. Okay, so it'll be pretty hard to fix, but I have a little discrepancy here on the waist, so let's see if I can fix it. Because the two pieces shifted when I was cutting the waist. Okay. Phew. And this is the dot and brown paper. So again, most commonly when we make a first pattern, we only pattern half of it. So under normal circumstances, this front yoke might not actually be on the fold for the first draft, but it definitely needs to be on the fold for the manila. But as I said in the previous video, putting it on the fold will help cut this out of fabric if I have the whole thing before I do the manila. And then also zoom out a little bit so that I can get the whole thing on screen. And then also, heaven forbid something should go wrong and you run out of time and aren't able to make a manila. If you have the correct number and complete shapes of all the patterns, it will afford you the opportunity to get more points. Then, I mean, you'll still be missing points for not having the manila, but at least you'll have demonstrated that you understand how many pieces and what shape they need to be, which is helpful for when we're trying to assess outcomes for the course. Okay, so on the front, I forgot to put the yoke, or sorry, the notch for the pocket opening, the top of the pocket opening, so we'll do that first. Then we're going to have the same vertical notches for seam allowance, so at the side seam. And then, because we're not distinguishing, oops, that was that right there. We're not distinguishing between front and back ruffles and yokes, so we're going to have the same notching convention on the bottom part of the yoke. So that's the waist that connects to the bodice, and this is the bottom part that connects to the ruffle and the underlay. So for that, I'm just going to match up my center back dot paper to my side seam dot paper to find the center, and I'm going to notch the center. And then so that's a matching notch for my underlay and for my ruffle, and then I'll put also a center notch for my underlay and my ruffle here. But I do have a difference between my front and back yoke where they connect to the bodice, so I need to notch the center back differently. So what I'm going to do on the center back is I'm going to measure over 1/4 of an inch away from the fold and make a notch there, so that when this is unfolded, I have a double notch that's 1/2 inch apart. So that will signify center back. And then I'll want that same thing. Move some things over here. So this is my center back bodice. I want the same notching convention on my center back bodice waist. So 1/4 of an inch from the fold, I will make a mark. And I will notch the center back waist of the bodice as well, so that when the center back bodice is unfolded, there is a double notch, and the two notches are 1/2 inch apart, centered on the center back fold. So that way, when I go to sew these two together, I'll be able to tell the back yoke that goes because of these double notches at the center back waist. And then I'll go ahead and notch the 1/2 inch seam allowance at the side seam, both at the waist and where the yoke connects to the ruffle and the underlay, and then I'll notch my pocket. So there we go. There's our back yoke. I guess it needs to show up this way. So notch on center where the underlay and the ruffle, notch halfway for the underlay and the ruffle, notch side seam allowance, notch for the top of the pocket opening, and notch 1/4 of an inch from center back fold to match up to the back